If you love haunted house stories, the kind that make you double take at dark hallways, then stick around. Today, you're about to hear bone-chilling tales based on real accounts from families who experience things that defy all logic. Like the story you're about to hear, where a house seemed to hold something unseen, a silent presence that slowly grew more and more terrifying. But before we begin, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss another nightmare-fueled story, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I'll never forget the sound that vacuum cleaner made when it turned on by itself in the middle of the night. It was a rough noise, like someone was pulling the air forcefully, but there was no one there. Nothing. Just the emptiness of the dark hallway and that feeling that something or someone was watching me. It all started when my parents decided to move into that old house at the end of the street. It was beautiful, spacious, and the price was too good to be true. We should have been suspicious, but at first it just seemed odd. Little things, you know. Doors that wouldn't stay closed, a cold draft that blew through even with the windows locked, and that musty smell that never went away, no matter how much my mom cleaned. And speaking of her, my mom was always the type to keep everything spotless, even in the middle of the night. She worked during the day, so her routine was to sweep, mop, and vacuum the house when everyone else was asleep. Up to that point, everything seemed normal. The problem was that, after a while, she started hearing things. It was always when she turned on the vacuum. Amidst the motor's noise, you could hear something else. A whisper, a dragging of feet. Once she swore she heard someone calling her name very softly, as if they were right behind her. She would turn off the vacuum in fright, look back, and there was nothing. Just the shadow of the empty house. We even joked with her, saying it was all in her head, until the day my dad saw the hand. He was in the basement storing some boxes when he noticed the laundry chute, that tube that takes dirty clothes to the laundry room. He looked inside and saw something moving. It wasn't a piece of fabric, no. It was a hand, pale, almost translucent, as if made of smoke, but with long, thin fingers that clung to the edge of the chute. My dad was paralyzed. The hand moved slowly, as if trying to get out of there, and then it vanished. After that, things got worse. My younger brother, who had always been brave, came running into the living room one night, white as a sheet. He had seen a woman kneeling in the hallway, translucent like the hand, but wearing an old dress with her hair covering her face. She didn't move, just stayed there, as if she were praying or waiting. My sister, who always slept with her door open, started locking everything after she saw a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. You couldn't see the face, just a tall, thin silhouette, as if it were staring at her in the dark. She screamed, and when we ran to see, there was nothing. Just that cold that seemed to stick to the skin. And the toys. Oh, the toys were the worst. We had one of those electronic dolls that talks when you squeeze its hand. But it started activating on its own. The middle of the night, its voice echoed through the room. "Want to play?" And there was no one around. We took out the batteries, stored it in the closet, and even then, from time to time, we heard it. "Want to play?" The house breathed. That was it. It was alive, and it didn't want us there. We felt the presence all the time, as if someone were following us from room to room, always one step behind. My parents tried to rationalize, saying it was the wind, the old pipes, that we were imagining things. But we knew. Someone else lived in that house. And the worst? We still hadn't seen everything. After that night when the toy spoke by itself, we didn't sleep well anymore. My parents tried to hide their fear, but you could see it in their eyes. The house had won. We lived in panic, jumping at any noise, looking over our shoulders all the time. And the worst? The house knew. It seemed like it fed on our fear. My dad was the first to admit something was wrong. He started hearing voices in the basement, low whispers coming from behind the walls. Once, he swore someone called his name in my late grandmother's voice. He went down the stairs thinking it was one of us, but the house was empty. There was just a strong smell of wet earth, as if someone had dug a hole inside. My mom stopped cleaning at night. She couldn't take hearing the footsteps behind her anymore, the sound of the vacuum turning on by itself, as if something invisible were using it. Once, she left the vacuum in the hallway and went to get a cloth from the kitchen. When she returned, it had been pulled into the dark room. The door was closed, and she didn't have the courage to open it. I was the most skeptical in the family, but even I had my experience. It was in the middle of the night when I woke up with the feeling that someone was sitting on my bed. I couldn't see anything, but the mattress sank, as if a weight had settled there. I froze. Then came the worst. A breath. Slow, tired, right beside me. Warm. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep until dawn. My younger sister started having nightmares every night. She dreamed of a woman in a wet white dress who stood in the corner of her room. The woman didn't speak, just pointed to the window. And in the dream, there was always someone outside, looking in. When my sister told us this, we discovered that the window in her room didn't lock properly, and that sometimes it was found open in the morning. The last straw was when my brother disappeared for an hour. We turned the house upside down, shouting his name, until we heard a muffled cry coming from the laundry chute. We opened the lid, and there he was, huddled with scraped knees and tear-filled eyes. He said a voice had called him like a child's, and when he got close to the chute, something pulled him inside. We didn't doubt him. That's when my parents made the decision. We couldn't stay in that house anymore. In less than a week, we found a new place and left in a hurry without looking back. I didn't even care about losing the security deposit. I just wanted to get away from there. On the last night, before handing over the keys, I looked through the car window and I swear I saw something at the house's door. A tall, dark figure, as if it were watching us leave. And then, the living room light turned on by itself. We never found out what was in that house, whether it was a spirit, a portal, or just a heavy energy that fed on fear. But one thing I know, for sure, since we left there, the nightmares stopped. The toy never turned on by itself again, and my dad never heard voices again. But to this day, when I pass by that street, I don't look at the house, because I'm sure that if I look, I'll see someone in the window. And this time, maybe that person won't want us to leave. What a horror. I really want to know what you thought of the story. What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion here in the comments. Seeing a translucent hand coming out of a chute would be enough for many people to run away. But the most disturbing is when the presence seems to be behind you at the most intimate moment of the day. Like in the story you're about to see now, where a jealous spirit manifested itself in the bath. I'll always remember the first night I heard the knocks. It was a dry, metallic sound, like someone was rapping their knuckles against the wall of my bedroom. But there was no one there. No one visible, at least. I was about 12 years old at the time, and we had just moved into that old house in the suburbs. My parents said it was a great deal, spacious, low price, but I felt something was off from the very first day. The air was heavy, you know, like the house was breathing with us, but at a different rhythm. My stepdad, Charles, was the kind of guy who laughed at ghost stories. "It's all in your head, kid," he'd say whenever I mentioned the noises. But one night, I woke up to that cold. It wasn't a normal winter cold. It was something that came from within, as if the room had suddenly turned into a freezer. I huddled under the blanket trying to warm up when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Slow knocks coming from the corner of the room, near the closet. My heart raced. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, praying for it to stop. The next day, I told my mom. She looked at me with that worried expression but didn't doubt me. "I saw something last night," she confessed quietly. "I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a woman kneeling beside the bed. She was Asian with long black hair, just staring at me. When I blinked, she disappeared." We fell silent after that, both knowing it was no use telling Charles. He would just laugh and call us crazy. But then came the weirdest part. One afternoon, I was home alone playing video games when I decided to grab a leftover brownie from the kitchen. But the serrated knife we used to cut the brownies wasn't in the drawer. I searched everywhere until I found it, in my room, on top of the bed, as if someone had placed it there on purpose. And the worst part? I swore I heard a sigh behind me when I picked up the knife, From then on, things only got worse. My stepdad started complaining about hearing footsteps in the hallway late at night. "It sounds like someone is walking slowly, stopping by the door," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Once, he swore he heard a whisper in his ear, a woman's voice speaking in another language, and his room was the worst, always colder than the rest of the house, even in summer. We tried to ignore it, to go on with our lives as if nothing was happening, but it was impossible not to feel it. That presence, as if someone was always watching us, following us from room to room. I started to be afraid of being alone in the house, of going to the bathroom at night. Even my younger brother, who didn't believe in any of this stuff, started waking up screaming, saying he saw figures in the dark. And then, one night, everything came to a head. I was in my room trying to sleep when I heard it. It wasn't just knocks this time. It was something dragging on the hallway floor. Shh, shh, as if someone was being pulled. I huddled in bed, gripping the blanket until my fingers hurt, when the doorknob of my door started to turn. Slowly, as if whoever it was had all the time in the world. And then, the room turned icy again. The doorknob stopped turning. I stayed there, paralyzed, waiting for what would come next. The silence was worse than any noise, until, bam! Something hit the door hard, making the wood tremble. I let out a scream and threw myself back, almost falling off the bed. From the hallway came the sound of laughter, low, hoarse, as if someone was cackling with a mouthful of water. My stepdad woke up to the noise and came running. When he opened the door, there was nothing there. Just the dark hallway and that cold seeping from the floor. "What was that, kid?" he asked, but I could see on his face that he already knew. He had heard it. We stood there looking at each other until my mom appeared, pale, holding a candle. "It's not just you," she said. "I hear things in the kitchen every night. Plates moving as if someone is looking for something." The next morning I decided it was enough. I took the brownie knife, which always disappeared and reappeared in strange places, and threw it in the trash, far from the house. But when I came back inside, there it was, on top of the table, clean as if it had been washed. My hands were trembling. It was as if the house wouldn't let us get rid of it. That night, Charles decided to confront whatever it was. He set up a cheap camera in the hallway and left it recording. The next day, we gathered to watch it. In the first few minutes, there was nothing but emptiness. Then, suddenly, the image shook, and there it was, a whitish figure, crawling on the floor, dragging itself toward my brother's room. Its head turned toward the camera slowly, and I swear it smiled. That was the last straw. My mom freaked out. "We're leaving. Today." We didn't even wait until the end of the month. In 2 hours, we were throwing everything we could into the car and getting out of there. When I closed the door for the last time, I looked back. In my bedroom window, a shadow stood there, watching us leave. Years later, I found out the house had been demolished. The new owner, a guy who didn't believe in any of that stuff, renovated everything, until one night he disappeared. The police found only one thing in the rubble, a serrated knife, clean, as if it had never been used. To this day, I don't eat brownies, and if I hear a tap, tap, tap in the middle of the night, I pretend it's the wind. Weird, right? This spirit seemed not to accept sharing the attention of those it loved. But sometimes the problem isn't a lone spirit, but an entire house taken over by presences, some innocent, others not so much. As you'll see in the next story, where a family had to deal with ghost children and a shadow man watching everything. The first thing that made me realize something was wrong in that house was the bedroom door, locking itself at night. It wasn't one of those ordinary locks, you know. It was as if someone was on the other side, turning the key slowly, carefully, just to make it clear that I wasn't welcome there. And the worst part? I was alone. At least that's what I thought. At the time, I lived in an old house on the outskirts of Florence, one of those stone constructions that seem to carry centuries of history in their walls. It was beautiful, full of details, but it had a heavy atmosphere. My girlfriend, Sophia, always said she felt something strange in the place, as if we were being watched all the time. I laughed at her, of course. "It's just the house making old noises," I would say. until things started becoming impossible to ignore. One night I was in the shower when I heard someone call my name. The voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it clearly came from inside the shower stall. I turned off the water immediately, my heart pounding, and looked around. Nothing. Just the shower steam and that silence which seemed louder than any noise. It must have been my imagination, I thought. But then it happened again, and this time, I felt something. It was as if someone was there, so close that I could almost feel the coldness of their breath on the back of my neck. Sophia started having even weirder experiences. She would wake up in the middle of the night with the feeling that someone was sitting on the bed, pressing down the mattress. Once she swore she saw a woman in a white dress in the hallway, but when she turned on the light, there was nothing. I still tried to maintain my skepticism, but then came the day of the crystal ball. We were in the garden, enjoying the afternoon sun, when something fell from the tree and shattered on the ground. It was a small crystal ball, one of those decorative ones, but it wasn't ours. We had never owned anything like that. When I picked up the pieces, I felt a strange coldness rise through my fingers, as if it had been left there on purpose. And it was that night that we found the card. The deck was stored in the drawer, intact, but when I opened it, there was only one card facing up, the Queen of Spades. Sophia turned pale. She said that, in Italian tradition, this card is a bad omen, associated with treacherous women or jealousy. That's when we started to connect the dots. The strange events always happened when I was alone, or when Sophia and I showed affection. A longer hug, a kiss on the sofa, and soon there would be a noise, an object falling, a door slamming. It was as if something, or someone, didn't like seeing us together. And in the shower it was worse. Besides the calls, there started to be pressure. It wasn't my imagination. It was as if invisible hands were pushing me against the wall, squeezing me, trying to push me away. I had never believed in hauntings. But when your house becomes a battleground against something you can't explain, see, or touch, you start to reconsider. And when your girlfriend starts crying in fear every night, saying she hears voices whispering her name in the dark, you know you can't pretend everything is okay anymore. We tried everything. Coarse salt, holy water. Even a priest came to bless the house. But some energies, some presences, they don't go away just because you ask them to. And this one, I felt deep in my soul, was the kind that wouldn't give up so easily. Things only got worse after that night when the spirit decided to show its strength. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in the shower, the water almost cold, when suddenly I felt an invisible hand pushing me hard against the tiles. It wasn't a scare, it was an attack. I almost fell, and when I steadied myself against the wall, I saw, I don't know how, a handprint in the mirror's mist. A small, thin hand of a woman, and then the shower water turned icy all at once, as if someone had turned off the tap outside. I ran out, soaked and trembling, and when I told Sophia, she just looked at me with tear-filled eyes and said, "She doesn't want you here. She doesn't want us together." That's when we started researching. We asked the older neighbors, dug into records, and discovered that decades ago, a young woman had died in that house, drowned in the bathtub. They said she was obsessed with her fiancé, but he betrayed her. And on the day of her wedding to another man, someone found her lifeless, dressed in white, with a deck of cards scattered around. The card in her hand? The Queen of Spades. I didn't want to believe it, but it all made too much sense. The jealousy, the attacks when Sophia and I touched, the whispers in the shower. It was her, and she wasn't going away. One midnight, I woke up to Sophia screaming. She was sitting on the bed, huddled, pointing at the dark corner of the room. "There's someone there," she cried. I turned on the light. Nothing. But the air was heavy, and on the floor in front of the closet, there was a trail of water, as if someone wet had walked there and stopped to watch us. The next day we found all our photos turned upside down, and the bedroom door locked again, even with the key in my pocket. That's when I realized she wasn't going to leave us in peace. And if we didn't get out of there, something worse was going to happen. Something much worse. The last straw was when Sophia woke up with finger marks on her neck. She was as pale as a sheet, her eyes wide with terror. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw 5 purple thin marks as if someone had squeezed her throat hard while she slept. At that moment I knew. It wasn't about scares or noises anymore. She wanted Sophia away from me. And if we didn't leave, the next time it wouldn't just be marks. We decided to leave that very day. We packed what we could, left furniture behind, and barely waited for the sun to rise to flee that cursed house. But ghosts, it seems, don't respect goodbyes. While I was loading the last boxes into the car, I heard a noise coming from the bathroom, water running. I ran there and found the bathtub overflowing, red, as if it were full of blood. And in the middle of that dirty water, floating, was the Queen of Spades. Sophia screamed my name from below, and when I looked through the window, I saw her paralyzed in the garden, staring at something behind me. I turned, and there it was, a pale figure, in a soaked white dress, dark hair covering her face. She wasn't floating, she wasn't ghostly. She looked real. And then slowly she raised a hand and pointed at Sophia. I didn't think. I grabbed my girlfriend by the arm, threw what was left in the car, and we sped away without looking back. We spent months in a cheap hotel, then rented a tiny apartment on the other side of town. We never spoke of that house again. But sometimes, when I'm in the shower and the water suddenly turns cold, or when I find an old deck of cards with the Queen of Spades on top, I feel it. She didn't stay there. She came with us. The first few weeks were calm. We thought we had escaped, but then the little signs started. The smell of stagnant water in the hallway, even without leaks. The feeling that someone was sitting at the foot of the bed when we woke up at night. And the cards, always the Queen of Spades, appearing in impossible places. Inside the sock drawer, under the pillow. Once, even in the fridge, stuck to a jar of olives. Sophia started to wither away. She wasn't sleeping well. She would jump in the shower as if the water burned, and she was always looking over her shoulder. I tried to keep calm, but every night was the same. The sound of footsteps in the hallway, the creak of the doorknob turning slowly, and that cold that seeped into the room even with the window closed. Until one night I woke up to Sophia screaming. She was on the bathroom floor, huddled in the corner, her eyes fixed on the foggy mirror. When I approached, I saw, written in the steam with thin, crooked letters as if someone had traced them with a wet finger, "He is mine." That's when I realized that running away wasn't enough anymore. She wasn't tied to the house. She was tied to me. And if I didn't do something, Sophia would be the next to end up like that woman, dead, dressed in white, with a deck of cards scattered around. The next day, I went to the old house alone. The door was open, as if someone had been waiting for me. The air inside was heavy, full of dust and something more, a sweet and rotten smell like old flowers. I went up the stairs to the bathroom where it all had started, and placed on the floor the only thing that could end it, the complete deck, with the Queen of Spades in the center. "Enough," I said, my voice echoing in the empty walls. "You can stay with me, but leave her alone." The silence that followed was worse than any noise. And then, slowly, the bathroom door began to close by itself. When I returned to the apartment, Sophia was sleeping deeply, for the first time in months. On the floor, near the bed, a single torn piece of paper, the Queen of Spades, cut in half. But I know it's not over. Because every time I close my eyes, I feel cold hands brushing against my face. And in the bathroom mirror, when the steam clears, sometimes I see a silhouette behind me. A woman in a white dress, smiling, waiting. She still thinks he is hers. Creepy, right? Two completely different entities sharing the same space. One playful, the other downright menacing. But what if the house itself holds an energy that toys with your fear? That's exactly what happens in the next story. Before we continue, if you're still here, it means you're loving these tales. So smash that like button to tell YouTube you want more horror content. I'll never forget the first day I heard the laughter. It was light, almost like broken chimes, echoing through the hallways of that old house. We had just moved in, you know. I thought it was the wind hitting some forgotten toy in the backyard, but there was no wind. and there were no toys. The house was old, one of those wooden ones that creak with their own weight, and it was at the end of a dead-end street, surrounded by trees so tall they almost blocked out the sun. My mom loved it when she saw the price. "A steal," she said. I should have been suspicious. Nothing is cheap without a reason. The first few days were normal, if you can call it normal, to wake up in the middle of the night with the feeling that someone had just whispered in my ear. I would look around the empty room and only hear my own heart beating. But then it started to get worse. One night, I was in the kitchen getting some water when I heard footsteps behind me. They weren't heavy, no. It was like a child was running from one room to another, barefoot. I turned quickly and nothing, just the dark hallway. But the noise continued. Light footsteps, fast, as if someone was playing hide and seek. And the murmurs. God, the murmurs. They seemed to come from inside the walls. Sometimes it was just a whisper. Other times you could swear it was a whole conversation, low, like children telling secrets. Tried to ignore it, said it was my imagination, until the day the kitchen chair moved by itself. I was sitting at the table, eating a sandwich, when the chair next to me was pulled back slowly, as if someone was about to sit. The leather creaked, the legs scraped the floor. I froze. There was no wind, no tremor, nothing that could explain it. Just an empty chair, stopped by my side as if waiting for someone. My mom started lighting candles. She had always been religious, but at that time she had a rosary in her hand all the time. Holy water in the corners of the house, salt on the doors, low prayers before sleeping. I saw her looking at nothing, with wide eyes, as if she had heard something I hadn't heard yet. And then came the night when my friend saw someone on the sofa. We were playing video games, laughing loudly, when James suddenly stopped and looked back. "Who is that child?" he asked. We turned together, and for a second I also saw a small shadow sitting on the sofa as if watching us. But when we blinked, there was nothing, just emptiness, and a strange smell in the air, sweet and sour at the same time, like spoiled fruit. Speaking of which, the fruits rotted within hours. We'd buy bananas in the morning, and by the afternoon they were already black. Apples would get soft and have a strange mold, even outside the fridge. My mom said it was humidity, but we knew. Something in that house didn't like fresh things. And the objects? Shelves that knocked things over for no reason. Glasses that fell from the table without being touched. Once, a heavy book flew out of nowhere and hit the wall of my room, leaving a mark that never went away. I started sleeping with the light on. I was afraid to close my eyes and feel that presence again, standing in the corner, watching me. My mom heard voices at night. She never really told me what they said, but I saw the way she held the rosary until her knuckles turned white. The house had a life of its own, and it didn't want us there. We moved out in the middle of the month, without notice, without explanation to the owner. We just threw our things in boxes and left. On the last night, while I loaded my bags into the car, I swore I heard the laughter again. Light, distant, as if the children who lived there before us were having fun with our departure. But this is just the first part. Because the worst wasn't in the house, the worst came with us when we left there. We thought we had escaped, that leaving that cursed house behind, the events would stop. But the first day in the new apartment already showed that we had brought something with us. It was my mom who noticed first. On the first night, she woke up to the sound of someone dragging their fingers on her bedroom door. Thin scratches, like children's nails. When she opened it, there was nothing. Just the empty hallway and that same sweet and rotten smell, like fruit forgotten at the back of the cabinet. I started hearing the whispers again, but now they came from inside my own room. It was as if someone was under my bed, breathing deeply, waiting for me to move to pull my foot. One night, I woke up with a weight on the mattress, as if a child had climbed onto my bed and sat near my legs. When I turned on the light, the sheet was sunken, but there was nothing there. My friend stopped coming over. James, who had seen the figure on the sofa, said that every time he passed by our building, he felt a chill down his spine. "There's something wrong with you guys," he said, and then disappeared from my social media. I don't blame him. The objects continued to fall by themselves. One day, a glass of water flew from the kitchen table and shattered against the wall, as if thrown by invisible hands. My mom covered the mirrors with cloths. She said she saw figures in them, small pale faces reflected where there should have been no one. The last straw was when the doors started slamming by themselves. It wasn't wind, it wasn't a draft. It was someone walking through the rooms, opening and closing everything forcefully. One midnight, I woke up to a noise coming from the kitchen. Cutlery clattering, plates dragging, as if a child was playing with them. When I went to see, everything was on the floor, but not broken, just spread out, as if they had been placed there on purpose. My mom started lighting candles and throwing holy water in the corners again, but this time, it seemed to make no difference. Things only got worse. She started dreaming about children crying, always the same ones in old dresses and with dark eyes, who pointed at her and said, "Why did you leave? We wanted to play more." I couldn't take it anymore. I slept with the TV on, just so I wouldn't hear the footsteps in the hallway. But always there was that feeling of being watched, of having someone in the room with me, breathing softly, waiting for me to close my eyes to get closer. And then, one afternoon, my mom came home from work with a package of coarse salt and a determined look. "We're going to end this," she said. But I already knew. We hadn't escaped that house. We had brought it with us. My mom spread coarse salt on all the doors and windows, prayed aloud, even burned a handful of herbs that a spiritual healer gave her. But that night was different. I was almost asleep when I heard the first tap on my door. It wasn't a knock. It was light, as if a small child was trying to get my attention. Tap, tap. My blood froze. Then came the second. Tap, tap. And then a little laugh. Low, close. When I sat up in bed, the doorknob started to move. Slowly, as if someone was trying to open it but couldn't. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I just saw that doorknob turning, until it stopped. And then, from the other side, a voice. "Let us in." It wasn't a human voice. It was composed, as if several children were speaking at the same time, whispering through a throat that didn't exist. My mom ran into my room with the rosary in her hand, and the voice stopped immediately. But we knew they were still there, on the other side of the door, waiting. The next day, she brought a priest. The man looked at the house, made the sign of the cross, and said straight up, "You didn't bring a ghost. You brought a portal." He explained that the old house was a trapped place, a place where bad things stayed trapped. And when we left there without closing what had been opened, we dragged them along. The ritual he performed was intense. Candles that went out by themselves, cold wind in a closed place, and at one moment I swear I saw small, pale hands holding the edges of the hallway mirror, as if they were trying to get out. The priest shouted an order, threw holy water on the glass, and silence. For an instant, everything stopped. We looked at each other, not breathing. And then, from the depths of the hallway, came a final whisper. "We will be back." The priest said it was over, but to this day, when I'm alone at night, I hear light footsteps in the hallway, and sometimes, very softly, laughter. They're still here, and they're angry. How scary. What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion here in the comments. The bathroom doorknob turned by itself. I saw it, with my own eyes. And it wasn't one of those old building tremors, nor was it the wind, because there wasn't any wind in that queen's apartment. The bathroom door was made of frosted glass, the kind that makes everything blurry, but you could see the gap underneath. And there was no one there, just the doorknob, turning slowly, as if someone were on the other side, with all the calm in the world, trying to get in. I froze. My room faced the hallway, and from there I could see the front door and the bathroom door. That night everything was quiet, too quiet. No noise from the street, no footsteps from the neighbors, just my heart beating in my ears. The doorknob stopped. I kept looking, waiting for it to move again, but nothing. Until, click. The door opened just a little bit, just enough for the darkness inside to seem thicker, you know? I didn't go check. Not that night. I closed my room door and buried my head under the blanket as if I were 8 years old again. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. The apartment was old, the building had its noises, but I knew. Someone, or something, had tried to get into that bathroom with me on the outside. And that was just the beginning. My parents lived downstairs, and when I mentioned the door, they laughed. "It's all in your head," my dad said, taking a sip of his coffee. "This building is over 100 years old, everything creaks." But then my mom stopped stirring the pot and said, "We've seen some strange things here too." She didn't want to talk more about it, but after I insisted, she told me that one night, in the middle of the night, they heard children running through the hallway, laughing, but there were no children in the building. And the worst part? The footsteps stopped right in front of our door. I couldn't ignore it anymore. After that night, I started noticing everything. The doors moved by themselves. It wasn't just the bathroom. The front door, which I swore I had locked, would appear slightly open. Sometimes, I heard whispers in the hallway, as if someone were talking softly. But when I got there, silence. And always that feeling of being watched. You know that feeling of a weight in the air? As if something was there, just waiting for you to look the wrong way. The apartment was near a cemetery. I had never paid attention to that before. It was just a piece of land with tombstones, right? But the more strange things happened, the more I thought about it. Could something have come from there? Someone who didn't want to stay buried? One night, I was home alone. My parents had gone out and the apartment felt heavier than usual. The lights were strangely dim, as if something had sucked the energy out. I sat on the sofa, trying to distract myself with the TV when I heard knocks, light but clear, on the front door. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't a neighbor. Who knocks like that, slowly, almost curiously? I stayed still, looking at that frosted glass door, and then I saw something dark passed by outside. Not a person, a shadow, but dense as if it were solid. It stopped right in front of the door, and I swear I felt it staring at me through the glass. The TV turned off by itself, and then the doorknob started to turn, and it turned all the way. The click of the door unlocking was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. My body locked up. I couldn't run, couldn't scream. I could only stay there, watching that door open slowly, as if someone were pushing it carefully. But there was no one on the other side, just an empty darkness and a smell of wet earth, the kind that sticks to the back of your throat. Then came the cold. It wasn't a draft, no. It was an ice that came from within, as if the air in the apartment had turned into a living thing crawling on my skin. The TV turned on suddenly, just static, that loud hiss that fills your head. And amidst the noise, I heard it. A voice. "Get out!" It wasn't a whisper, it wasn't a scream. It was as if the word had appeared directly in my brain, stuck to my thoughts. And I knew. It wasn't a warning. It was an order. The front door slammed shut by itself, locking again, as if it didn't want me to escape. That's when I saw the shadow in the hallway. It wasn't like the one at the door. This one was more solid. It looked like a person, but twisted, as if the bones had broken and healed wrong. It didn't walk. It dragged its feet slowly towards the living room. And even without seeing its eyes, I knew it was staring at me. I didn't think. I ran to my room, locking the door behind me. My hands were trembling so much I could barely hold my phone. I called my parents, but the call didn't go through. Just silence on the other end, as if the line had been cut. Then, knocks on the bedroom door. Light, almost polite. I wasn't breathing. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, and I kept looking at the doorknob, waiting for it to turn again. But it didn't. Instead, I heard laughter, low, childlike, coming from somewhere in the room. "You shouldn't have come back." The voice came from behind me. When I turned, there was nothing, just the closet mirror, and in it for a second I swear I saw someone behind me. A pale face, sunken eyes, smiling. The light went out. I screamed. I'm not proud of it. but I screamed like never before in my life, and in the dark, something pulled my foot. That was enough. The next day, I was packing my things. My parents thought I was overreacting, of course. "It's an old building. These things happen," my dad said, as if doors opened by themselves every day. But my mom, she looked at me seriously and said quietly, "I believe you." She told me that when they moved in, they thought it was just a cheap apartment, until the day they saw a woman in an old dress standing in the kitchen, who disappeared when they blinked. I didn't wait to see what else appeared. I packed everything in 2 bags and left. I never went back there. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear a click on the door of my new room. And I remember that voice in my ear, "You shouldn't have come back." And I wonder if I really escaped. If you've made it this far, then you felt that same chill running down your spine as I did telling these stories. Subscribe to keep diving into these unsettling accounts with me, always with that eerie vibe that lingers in your mind. Drop a like if any of these stories made you think twice before turning off the lights. And if you stuck with me till the very end, comment brick below, just so I know who's brave enough to ride this out to the last second. There's another video right here that'll keep you in that dark mood. Click it, and let's keep the nightmare going. I'll see you there.